All right. Thank you for having me here. First of all, my name is Thomas. I'm the founder of Explorer, XRP Forensics. I'll try to give a brief overview of the state of criminal finances on the XRP Ledger and a take on how we can use data proactively to protect the users and impact the use of the ledger for criminal finances. An investment website advertises guaranteed returns of investments. Investors, they start dipping their toes and sending small deposits to this investment website. And yields, they are being paid out to the investors. So the project, it really seems legit. And slowly, the investors, they start inviting their friends and their families, who also invite their friends and families. And this investment scheme is just growing. After all, it can't be a scam because it's been going on the project has been running for about a year already. Until one day, it suddenly stops. One day, the withdrawal feature of the website stops working. You look at the customer support stops replying to emails, and all the accounts associated with that website is being emptied. So this example is just one out of hundreds of stories like that. So while I continue the presentation now, a graph will be growing behind me. And that's actually the last couple of years. It starts in January 2020. It's the last couple of years of criminal financial activity that we have observed on the XRP Ledger. Some of the stories behind these patterns, they are quite similar to the story about the investment scheme I just shared before. It's exchanges and investment platforms that is suddenly disappearing after years of operation. But other stories could be those of hacks, SIM swaps, social engineering, phishing scams, giveaway scams, exchanges being hacked, etc. So what can we do to impact this illicit use of the ledger technology? So the main objective behind the work that we do at Explorer is to make the ledger, XRP Ledger, as unappealing as possible to use for criminal activity. So that's objective number one. With an open and decentralized and global financial network, the challenges in doing that are many. The first thing we need to realize is that there is no way for anyone to seize money or restrict accounts on the ledger. There is no user protection on layer 1 of the blockchain. Any means to protect users and intervene with the use has to happen somewhere else than on the blockchain itself. It has to happen in a second layer, in between the wallets and the ledger itself. It's impossible to provide any form of user protection from a blockchain without responsible wallet developers, gateways, and exchanges. So from our point of view, self-regulation in this space is crucial, such as implementing know your customer or anti-money laundering practices, even if you're not required to by regulation where you're operating from. Regulations, they vary a lot between jurisdictions and may be even close to non-existing in some places of the world. So that results in a very uneven playing field among participants. Some exchanges and custody providers will have to implement by regulation these KYC rules and others don't at all. As a result, there is a large gap between, number one, the exchanges that are operating in the most strictly regulated areas of the world, and number two, those that operate in less regulated areas of the world, and number three, those who go above and beyond what is required of them, no matter if they need to or not. This big gap in the willingness to self-regulate and go above and beyond their obligations, and thereby be a great example of how digital assets can work in a regulated world, might actually be one of the biggest obstacles in combating criminal finances. In other words, irresponsible exchanges, that doesn't treat digital assets as actual money is counterproductive to the public opinion of blockchain by people, and also how the regulators are observing the industry in total. It's not the tools to counter this criminal activity that is missing, it's actually the willingness to use it and implement it. In the case of this first story, the investment scheme, more than 90% of what was taken from users of XRP was actually stopped by responsible exchanges. And it was handled according to that exchange's internal procedures and what they had to do in the regulatory obligations. But it could have just as well been moved to an exchange, to an irresponsible exchange with no obligations and no need to act or report suspicious activity to an FIU. And then it would be swapped to a different asset and moved to a different blockchain, and it would be almost impossible to trace. So while we wait for the regulatory balance to even out, what can we do to limit this kind of activity? We can start now by forming alliances and partnerships with exchanges, with other KYT providers, with the financial intelligence units and law enforcement agencies. And we can do this to at least try to catch some of the money that is falling into the wrong hands. So what we do at Explorer is that we index all activity on the XRP Ledger in real time in a large graph database. Much as this visualization is a graph, we store all that information in a database that is queryable. And then we combine that data of activity on the ledger with the knowledge that we collect from our partners and the knowledge about how criminals are actually moving. We recognize the patterns, how criminals are actually moving the money. So that knowledge we combine and also with account reports from individual users of the network if they have been scammed or have been stolen money or something like that. So we combine all of that. And that is resulting in an up-to-date real-time advisory list that the responsible exchanges can use to check incoming transactions for suspicious activity and report accordingly. And the data is actually also the cornerstone in the tools that we built on top of this database, tools for analyzing the flow of money, for extrapolating clusters of associated accounts and much more. And as all of these hoops that the criminals are making to launder their money, all those hoops, they try to shake off investigators, try to hide their activity, but it remains as a persistent pattern in the data because the blockchain doesn't forget. So it's not like banks or financial institutions that burn their paperwork that is 5 years old or whatever, depending on where they live. The ledger is persistent. So the data is there and you can always go back, and it's actually an invaluable insight when you're looking in past cases as well. So this data is also used in a broader range of middleware services to proactively protect users instead of reactively checking incoming transactions. You can also use it proactively. An example is XRPL that is run by the foundation, XRPL Foundation. And it's used as a default node by a lot of wallets, as you know, and a lot of other services. So that actually means that if users are using a wallet that is connecting to this cluster, all transactions they submit is submitted through their nodes. So that's a very good place to insert a middleware. And that's what's being implemented by the XRPL cluster. They are using the data to actually scan the destination of payments that users are submitting to this cluster and check if it's a verified scam according to our real-time advisory list. And this implementation has, in less than a year, almost saved people from sending 4 million XRP to scams. That's 4 million XRP that was prevented from ever being submitted to the network. So it's not something any exchange has to seize and withhold and repay and submit as a suspicious activity or anything. It was never sent. And similarly, this kind of middleware is also used by other exchanges and service providers to warn users if the address they are going to send money to is on a list like that. So let's fast forward this graph and zoom out and have a look at it. Add some color to it as well. Okay, so all of these dots, we are looking at more than 130 million XRP. All of these dots are accounts that is in control of criminals. And this is all the money that is being sent between all of those accounts to try to hide where it came from. All of these purple dots, it's individual users. So it's people who hold their own keys, are their own bank, so to speak. And they're using several different kinds of wallets, but they send money to these scams. So we need to implement middleware. We need more responsible wallet providers, hardware wallet providers, whatever services they use. And then last of all the orange dots. That's the centralized exchanges where the money is sent and then it's swapped to other assets and withdrawn, put through mixer services or whatever on different chains to make it near impossible to trace the money going forward. So while we wait for the world to regulate the industry, we continue to build the tools and the technology that will only become more and more efficient as regulation is catching up, because centralized exchanges will be forced to comply more and more. Meanwhile, we explore how we can make the biggest impact against the criminal finances through customer protection in middleware and through partnerships and alliances with responsible exchanges and wallet developers. Thank you.